Elizabeth Anderson. Picture this. In the 1930s, there was a drought that America would never forget. A drought that left many people homeless, starving, and hopeless. There are many days when temperatures reached over 100 degrees, and dust storms rose high into the air, blowing topsoil into drifts, making soil creep and crawl into corners of houses, forcing people to hang wet clothing and windows to catch the dirt before breathing in the dusty air. Many crops were destroyed, leaving farmers with no money to provide for one of the most basic necessities of life: food. Land prices plummeted by 17 to 28%. Over 2.5 million people moved out of the Great Plains. The economic devastation caused by lack of conservation practices threatened American agriculture. A 1930 soil survey showed that over 15% of land had been ruined, and 75% of the topsoil had been blown away. In Oklahoma alone, 6 million acres of land showed evidence of erosion. In the following years, many programs are started to help conserve soil. One of these programs, the Conservation Reserve Program, or CRP, was started by the United States Department of Agriculture in the 1950s. CRP encourages farmers to convert easily erodible farmland into grassland. It changes cropland into native grassland, wildlife habitats, shelter windbreaks, buffer strips, or grass waterways in order to conserve soil. This past February, over 27 million acres were enrolled in CRP. It pays $5 per acre to landowners who practice regular land maintenance and $50,000 annually to general and continuous sign-up landowners. Because $1.8 billion are annually being dispersed, money is squirming its way into local economies, supporting small businesses, and creating more jobs. On the other side of the issue, some believe that CRP is a waste of good farmland. They don't see how it pays to keep land in CRP versus raising a crop that can readily be turned into a good source of food for our starving world population. Dan Charles, a reporter for a national public radio show, says, "It's easy to tell the land in the Dakotas is part of the CRP. Those fields have no cattle grazing in them, they aren't plowed or growing crops. Instead, they're filled with tall grass. Often, you'll see piles of rocks along the edges of those fields, a telltale sign that once showed that those fields were plowed and wheat grew there. The CRP costs taxpayers almost $2 billion a year. That amounts to about 8% of all farm subsidies. In addition, some farmers are tilling up the CRP land. They argue that farmland being worth an average of $2,650 per acre in the U.S. is more valuable than CRP. Converting CRP land back into cropland is a decision many farmers are being faced with as their contracts with CRP are ending. But what most people don't realize is how important conservation programs are to our precious soil and environment. Without the important fertilized topsoil, farmers won't be able to produce as high of a yield in the future. As the world's population explodes to over 9 billion people by the year 2050, conservation is the answer to filling the need for food. American farmers already are responsible for feeding 125 people each. That's 95% of the world's population. With less soil to plant all these crops, who's going to provide for the food needed to feed a starving planet? Furthermore, within this year, CRP has transferred $14 million of funds into the Emergency Conservation Program and has utilized $16 million in helping states affected by drought. With $30 million, the CRP is helping farmers and ranchers cope with drought-stricken areas by moving water and forage to livestock and recovering lands that are affected by drought. What's more is, not only does CRP affect farm-related businesses, it affects growth in other businesses that moderate CRP's influence on total employment. Simulation models imply that if CRP contracts had ended in 2001, roughly 51% of CRP land would have returned to crop production. This also means that spending on outdoor recreation would decrease by approximately $300 million per year in rural areas, making an impact on employment and affecting many people's income. Without programs such as CRP, America would be back to hanging wet clothes over windows and practicing precautions for future life-threatening dust storms. Because of CRP, America has taken many steps forward in preserving valuable soil. Americans need conservation practices to provide for a healthy, clean environment and economy, not just for today, but for the future.